You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SIBO. The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. SIBO's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.sibo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, welcome back to the Option Block, listeners, live from the Southern Studio here in scenic and sunny Palm Beach, Florida, coming to you at the tail end. They're literally tearing it apart as we speak, listeners, the tail end of the Options Industry Conference. Man, what a week it has been. A just plethora of guests rolling through the Southern Studio here. You'll be hearing all of that fun later on the network. If you're hanging out on the Pro, you've already got a bunch of those episodes hitting you already. So if you want to check out stuff early, the optionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more, listeners. As we learn who's joining me on this scenic and sunny in-person, IRL, as the kids say, edition of the Option Block, I am very pleased to be joined. I can confirm proof of life. He does exist. None other than the Flowmaster himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz from SIBO. Mr. Flowmaster, good to see you in person, sir.
Thank you, Mark, and hi, Mike, and hi, everybody listening. I love the OIC conferences. I think this might be my 20th, 21st year coming, and it's when we get to see everybody in person, talk about what's going on in our industry and the marketplace, and also have some fun. So, and Palm Beach it's been awfully sunny, that's for sure. So it's been a good time. I've learned some things. Seen a lot of friends and made some new ones.
And I can confirm the Flowmaster is the belle of the ball. He is the talk of the town right now. We'll get to all that fun in a little bit, why he's causing such a dust up. But also joining us sadly not in person, but back. He never leaves the comfy confines of St. Charles. None other than Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. Uncle Mike, how are things in the beautiful confines, sir?
Always a pleasure to be here. And I mean, why do you need an ocean when you got the Fox River? That's what I always say.
You do always say that. Literally every time I talk to you, that's exactly what you say. All right, with the team assembled, if you're listening live, listeners, we will be going the old-fashioned way, raw, straight to the transition. So hopefully you can make it. I love to have the pro members joining us live whenever we can as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out here. Man, it's been a wild week. We've been busy talking all sorts of behind-the-scenes minutia from the world of options. Meanwhile, the options market, the market as a whole, has been chugging on along without us. We had Powell popping off this week. Apparently, the market's liking what he's been putting down. Also have earnings continuing this week. As we're kicking off the show here, listeners, we're back in the heavy green land. In fact, S&P was, yes, it still is north of 5,700 as we're recording this show right now. Listen, up about 80 odd handles today. So the bulls firmly back in charge. I guess Uncle Mike has been busy with his Facebook cabal over there, just saying bye, bye, bye. VIX cash coming back down again, 22 and a quarter, down about 3/4 of a point from where it was this time on the Monday show before I headed down to the Southern studio. VVIX at a 96, down 4 points from where it was on the Monday show. Let's go around the horn. Uncle Mike, we'll go virtual first. We'll start with you because you have not been down here at OIC this week. A wild week out there in the market, sir. What's catching your eye in the hallowed halls of St. Charles Wealth Management?
Well, I guess old Uncle Don is he must be on my Facebook kebab or whatever you call it, because he told everybody to buy today, and so the markets went up. So I mean, this is kind of opposite of what I'm used to with the Trump trades, because I remember during his first term, it was always, oh, we're going to have all sorts of tariffs, and then the markets go down, and then once the markets go down 1% or 2%, you add some deltas, and then he says, I think I'm going to postpone the tariffs, and then the markets go way up. But now he's playing both sides of it in that he's telling people to buy now. So he said buy stocks now. I believe it was about a couple hours ago. So that's definitely a new one for me. That the leader of the free world tells you to buy stocks. And so it looks like people are buying stocks right now. So that's definitely the main thing that's catching my eye today. That's for sure. A couple other things that are happening. We are getting some sellers in the bond market. Nothing too major, but we are getting a few sellers in the 10-year. My beloved silver is flat on the day. Gold is down 2% on the day. VIX hanging in there and at the 22 level. So we are getting some sellers in the VIX. A couple individual names that I like to follow and watch. Old Mr. Softy up another 2% on the day. So after its earnings announcement, apparently it's back in favor with the markets again. So for those of the listeners out there that are holding good old Microsoft, that's definitely something that should excite them. We have the Russell coming in, the Russell 2000 up 2.5% on the day. So that's another thing that the Russell, known for doing whatever the heck it wants to do, decided to have buyers in there today. And then just a couple of individual names that are noteworthy, if you will. I know we had our poll on the show with Palantir. Palantir and NVIDIA are pretty much neck and neck at the 118 level. Palantir is up about 70 cents, but in these markets, that's nothing. But Palantir must have not liked the being down because it's up 7.5% on the day because it wanted to catch up to NVIDIA in the poll. So if that's not proof that the major players listen to our show, I don't know what is. And just in looking at some of the other tech names, we have Meta back over the 600 mark. I think that's something that's noteworthy. And then people are even buying this crypto thing. What's it called? Bitcoin. I don't get it, but it looks like Bitcoin's up on the day too. But yeah, I think the bulls are in charge for today. And I'm curious to see how long this lasts, because I think a lot of this is driven from the president telling people to buy. That's my take on things.
Yep, you got the leader of the free world telling folks buy, buy, buy. So that's just that's I guess he's part of your Facebook cabal, Uncle Mike. I didn't know you invited Mr. DJT to your little Facebook cabal, but apparently he's a part of it. You better watch out. He might take it over on you if you're not paying attention out here. But Mr. Flowmaster, it's been a absolutely wild week down here at the conference. We'll get to the conference stuff in a second. I know you've been pretty busy, so I'm not sure how much you've had a chance to watch this week, but anything catching your eye in the broad markets this week, sir?
I think the big theme for me has been kind of, how sharply we really have rebounded from that early pain in April, which, a lot of people I talked to said, yeah, this is a little bit more serious than our usual kind of, volatility spike. This was really driven by some pretty serious macro changes, and yet we're kind of back down to VIX at 22, and the S&P is only down. I think we're down just over 1.5% or so year to date. It is definitely interesting times when you have to try to pay attention to the tweets and posts coming out of the White House for actual signals for the market. But this would kind of be the second one, right? That's what we saw the morning of April 9th as well. So, the volume, remains very, very strong. Today looks like we're on track for 65 million. And it's really, things have just calmed down, and I think a lot of people are very hesitant to kind of declare all clear, and, yet again, buy the dip really seemed to work, but it kind of did seem to work this time around. So, but it doesn't take much to things turn on a dime. We all know that. So, it's been a very active time, and more than the last couple of years, and just not only in terms of volume, but also in terms of kind of the serious rotation we're seeing, and just kind of the extremes in even the commentary out of the analysts, right? We still have some people saying that, that it's going to get worse before it gets better. And then you still have, plenty of bulls. So that's what makes a market, is we've got it coming from both sides.
That bull in chief, right? He's telling people to buy. So who cares what the talking heads on CNBC are saying when the bull in chief is talking? But Mr. Flowmaster, let's get down to serious business now. You were truly in your element this week, sir. I have to say, I told you this when you walked in. I've never had so many people come up to me, apropos of nothing else, and ask me, "Did you see Henry's slide on X?" You were tearing up the conference scene this week, sir. So let's just jump to that before we get to some of the other data points. You snuck in a very sneaky little slide at the end of your presentation, sir, which, if you've never seen one of Henry's State of the Industry presentations, listeners, a bunch of great visuals. We will have the audio for you. He was up there with Matt Amberson and Steve Sosnick, and also Ariane from Webull out there. We'll have the audio coming up for you on the network, I think, next week. Pro members will obviously be getting it earlier. We'll also I'll try to get the link to the deck from Henry, so you folks, if you want to listen to it and follow along with the visuals, you can do so on our website. But Henry, you snuck in one little sneaky slide at the end that took the conference by storm. I tweeted it out. A ton of people were freaking out about it online as well. It was a graph of SPX 0-day option volume per minute, just year to date so far this year. So, and it was broken down, listeners, by effectively minute of the day. And you could see here, so the question really is, when are people trading these 0-day things? And you have the expected spikes at the beginning and end of the day, which everyone expects the open and close to be kind of the hottest times of the day. So that confirms that. But I think what caught everyone else's eye, Henry, were these little spikes along the way intraday. And listeners, if you're not looking at the visual, it's like a smile, and with little teeth, little jagged fangs going up on it. And those peaks in volume coincide pretty much exactly with even times during the day. So a spike at 10 a.m., spike at 10:15, spike at 10:30, spike at 11, spike at 1, spike at 1:30, on and on throughout the day. So, Henry, you appear to have decoded what the algos are up to out here, sir. And apparently they're very systematic about their approach to 0-day. Tell us about this chart and why you think it's causing such a hubbub, sir.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, my presentations, I focus on the kind of volume growth we're seeing in the trends, and one of the trends towards the end was, we all know zero DTE activity is really, really strong. Makes up basically half, or sometimes even more than half of the activity in SPX and some of the other really liquid products, and. And one of the reasons for this is people using automation tools at the retail level to trade. And now these are not brokers; these are tools that basically connect to the brokerage platforms, and they're provided by third parties. And I've actually tested some of these out, and many of us have heard about the condor activity, and people selling vertical spreads and trying to capture the premium is a very common retail strategy in SPX 0 days. And so what was interesting is with the market intelligence team, we're looking at something last week in terms of the activity per minute, and it was related to trying to separate out retail style flow, which is a really common question, like how much of this is retail? And it's not an easy question to answer because there's pro tail and there's retail brokers that may have kind of institutional clients and vice versa. But so when we kind of eliminate the flow that we know is not retail, and we're left with basically the smaller trade sizes from the typical retail brokers, uh, what you see is a really interesting spike from the kind of the average volume in the SPX 0 days it's a few thousand contracts a minute. Okay, so total in the day it adds up to about 1.5 million contracts. But at exactly 10 and exactly 10:05 and exactly 10:10 and 10:15, so in the round minutes, so the things that end in zeros and fives, there's these really, really surprising spikes, about 4 or 5 times the level of activity that's not happening when we're on those round minutes. And at first we're like, well, maybe there's a problem with the data, but we dug into it, and that's exactly what's going on. And it's funny. We think it's coming from primarily. We know it's well, we're guessing that it's related to these algo tools. Okay, it is small trades. It's nothing big and institutional. And we actually think it has a lot to do with the human kind of tendency to pick round numbers. So there's a similar phenomena in stock prices, stock closing prices. They favor zeros and fives. So nickels and dimes are much more common than numbers ending in 8, 9, 4 cents. And that's because people like to put in the round number orders. If you want to buy Apple, you want to pay $120 for it. More people tend to pick those round numbers. So in the timing of these vertical spread trades in the 0 day options, people are doing the same thing. They're having it start at exactly 10 a.m. and then repeat every 15 minutes throughout the day. And so what we get are these spikes because there are enough of these people executing this strategy. And I was surprised. It really did blow away a lot of people in the audience. Maybe because it's just kind of simple. You can look at it and go, wow. That's hard to notice unless you were equipped to process, the what can be 10, 11 million trades a day now. So there's a lot of data you have to sift through to get this and aggregate it. But we looked back, we compared it to, the larger trade activity doesn't do this. So it really is a small trade behavior. And I think it kind of it quickly kind of gives people ideas in terms of like, okay, if you're one of these traders, that might mean you need to be a little bit careful. I'm not exactly, in fact, I know for a fact, jumping into the market at exactly 10 a.m. is not necessarily a great plan. And as market makers, we know, ex-market makers, something that's predictable that's coming from a customer is sometimes not really the best for the customer. So it really is an interesting time. I actually, the slide before that, I actually showed a couple screenshots of some of these automation tools. I'm sure some of our listeners have used them or maybe using them right now. But it is a new it's a new kind of use case for options. Retail customers or small accounts using automation, kind of like a quantitative investment strategy desk at a big bank. This is really brand new, and the 0 day options, especially in SPX, where you don't have to worry about the assignment issues that you have with the physically settled stuff. They really is kind of a really good product for that use case, and the fact that we have daily expirations now means that people can trade it the way they want, and there's these trading communities, Reddit forums and Facebook groups where people compare notes, and hey, there's Fed's going to release comments today at 2. Are we going to trade through 2, or are we going to kind of take the cut our positions at 1:30? And so there's a lot of kind of a community discussing strategies and approaches, and when you trade and when you don't trade. And so but it's a big part of the market now, and I was just happy to kind of find something that people really like to see.
Flowmaster, you've single-handedly broken all these
retail. People are
busy recoding to execute now at 12:59 because they're going to stick it to you with your even time allotment executions. That was just a fascinating chart. A lot of people are talking about that right now. You did your typical state of the industry on top of that chart. Any other interesting developments from that you want to share with our listeners?
It was kind of a continuation of the trends we've seen over the last couple of years. So continued retail strength. We see from the 606 reports, I was able to update that data right through March, that that more than half of the option volume is coming from the typical retail brokers that you think of, the Robinhood and the Schwabs and Fidelity. And the growth there, the first quarter of the year was a record. We're running basically 20% above last year, which already was a record. So just kind of talking about how the volume is growing, where it's coming from. The other big trend is continued short dated focus in SPX and some of the other ETFs, and just kind of digging into what people are concerned about, what they're where people see the growth is going to be coming from in the future. So it's been more of the same, but interestingly, we're seeing growth across the entire spectrum from single stock, index, ETF, flex options. And there were some discussion about the event contracts as well, on my panel, because I had some great experts with me, and Ariane Adams from Weibo mentioned that they actually let their clients trade the event contracts on financial numbers. And she said it's kind of an intro. Basically, it's a good transition point for a stock trader who's thinking about trading an option. He or she might try an event contract first, just to kind of get familiar with, like, well, here was my view, and I can with literally one click make that trade and see how it plays out. So in general, the mood at the conference, with volume up sharply, and it was said many times, most of the participants, whether they're exchanges or brokers or market makers, or even buy side, most of us do better when the volume continues to grow, and that's what we're seeing. And I even talked to a new market maker group, which is in the process of starting up, and that was really encouraging, because one of my concerns has always been the consolidation of the market maker space. And are we going to end up with a literally 2 or 3 ginormous market maker firms, which I don't think is the healthiest dynamic. And seeing somebody new kind of coming into the mix and starting to quote, and really taking on that challenge that it is when you have 18 exchanges, soon to be 20, and 1.7 million contracts, which is also going to continue to climb. Market making is a very, very heavy technical endeavor, and it's great to see new blood in that, on that side of the business as well.
Yeah, I agree. We had a chance to rotate some
market making firms in here, including some that are spinning up new operations in disparate parts of the country too. It's not just all Chi-Town in New York. You got some in Texas and kind of all over the place. So it's interesting to see this diaspora of market makers, and you could do that now. The technology connectivity is such, you can run a prop shop from the scrub brush of Texas if you want, Mr. Flowmaster out there. Let's see what else is going on out here in the markets today, listeners. Is it a hot, spicy one? Kind of is. Well, I guess unless you hang out in VIX land, then VIX is doing all right, especially when you see that the ADV has come in a little bit, down to about 854 a day now, 854,000. So coming back off the north of 1 million level it's been at for some time. Today, VIX at 343,000 contracts. The big dog out there today, 15, almost 16,000 of the June 18 puts, followed by number 2, about 12,000 of the AUG 40 calls. SPY also popping off this week, nearly 7 million contracts already. That's against an ADV of 10.6 million. So spoiler alert, probably going to hit that today, listeners. The S, 2.15 million, ADV 3.5 million. So another one probably on its way to hitting that again. Go figure. The commander-in-chief tells you to buy. It is your patriotic duty to buy. IWM 1 million contracts pretty much exactly right now. The ADV 1.57 million. So they're definitely going to hit that today. And even the Qs 3.25 million. The ADV 4.66 million. So things looking spicy out there as well. To the land of single names we go. Is it a hot day? Is everyone following along with the guidance from the White House listeners to trade those single names? Well, seems like the answer is yes, at least on the options front. A decently active day, all things considered. Not, setting the world on fire, not threatening 500,000 contracts to break into the top 10 or anything like that. But 325, that is, dare I say it, a little more than respectable. We've seen a lot fewer contracts to break into the top 10 recently. So we'll take 325 when we get it. That gets us to the artist formerly known as Meta, listeners. Meta right now, 607.80, up nearly $11 or nearly 2%. So go figure, the market's popping, Meta's popping. That's kind of how that works. Number 10, Meta, 325 on the tape. Number 9, to the Amazonians we go, 193.63, up nearly $5 or 2.6%. So again, another good day for your big tech bellwethers, listeners. Number 9, the Amazonians, 436. Keeping it in tech. Number 8, Alphabet. Good old Google, 440,000 contracts on the tape. Whereas Alphabet trading right now, 154 3/4, up about 3 1/3 or about 2.25%. Good for number 8, 440 on the tape. Number 7, good old Robinhood. We were just talking about in our pro chat last week about selling, I believe it was the 40 puts out there. Well, Robinhood, far north of the 40 handle right now, up about 445, trading 54.45, so up nearly a little over 9% right now. Good little pop for them today. The folks from Robinhood came through the Southern studio earlier this week. Listeners, stay tuned for an interesting chat with them. Obviously, they're putting up a lot of flow out there, so if you're intrigued about what's going on the Robinhood option side, stay tuned for that coming up on the network today. Hood number 7, 441 on the tape. Number 6, to AMD we go. AMD, 508,000 contracts right now. 103.5 is where it's trading, up about 3 1/4 or a little over 3%. Again, good for number 6, 508,000 contracts. Number 5, the monster. Is it looking monstrous today? Well, certainly is. 418.70, up 26 1/4 or 6.68%. Popping hard, getting back to what Uncle Mike was talking about, his beloved Bitcoin rallying and taking the monster along with it. Number 4 is the fruit company. They had an interesting week. They rallied hard last year on the strength of that buyback, then talking this week about maybe curtailing some of those buybacks. And the stock took a bit of a hit, but it's up today. 199.13, up nearly $3, about 290 or about 1.5%. Flirting once again, listeners, with that 200 handle. In fact, it had quite the range out there today. 194.68 this morning and hit the par strike ever so briefly, 200 and a nickel before retreating off of it. That 200 level, remember, listeners, we were talking about selling or buying the Dees 200 put in Apple for $18. How would you feel about that trade right now? 199.17 for Apple, listeners. And the number 4 spot, number 3, listeners, to Palantir we go. 118.5, up nearly $8 or 7.25%. Good for number 3, 1.28 million. Man, Palantir breaking into the top 3 these days. Talk about climbing the ranks out there. What's number 2, listeners? Is it Nvidia or is it Tesla? Who's wearing the crown today? The answer is it's not Tesla, because Tesla's number 2. 286.40, 10.18 to the upside today. So 10.18 to the upside, up nearly 4%. So Tesla clawing their way back after taking quite the drubbing of late out there. They rallied from about 272, looks like it was around their low this week, all the way up to 286, almost 287 where they are right now. Good for number 2, Tesla. Nearly 2 million contracts on the tape, 1.96 million. That means the big dog is Nvidia once again, 2.3 million, trading a little bit shy of 118, about 117.95, up nearly $1 today, or about 0.75%. Once again, we were talking about the par puts in Nvidia for $18. I don't think you're getting them for $18 now if you wanted to sell them, but intriguing nonetheless out there. On the single name front, anything else catching our eye this week? Well, of course, it is earnings week, listeners. We had Palantir on Monday, we had HIMS and the dumpster fire known as Ford. Tuesday, Marriott, AMD, and ADM. So whichever A acronym you wanted, they were popping off on Tuesday, as well as Rivian. I've been talking about how I'm anecdotally seeing a lot more Rivians driving around downtown Chicago. So read into that what you will. Nonetheless, Tuesday for Rivian. Wednesday, Uber and Disney. Disney popping hard, surprisingly getting some good numbers out of the parks. The parks have been the only thing that makes money for them for a long time. They have this new Disney killer, quote unquote, coming out from Universal, launching later this month. In fact, I'll be heading out there after the conference to get an early preview of that park. So a lot of people were concerned about the future of the parks for Disney, but apparently they crushed it this week. Also, good numbers on the streaming front. Disney popping off yesterday. Carvana and DoorDash. Today we have Peloton, Crocs, Coinbase, DraftKings, and everybody's favorite TKO. If you want to see the earnings move results, and earnings season reports, you know where to go, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the options news and articles tab to begin your journey to the dark side. Meanwhile, it's time for us to continue our journey, listeners, right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild, and we put the Flow Master to work. He wants to go play pickleball right now. He wants to just go relax. He did his duty for God and country this week. He shook up the options market with the sweet chart, but we say no. There's more business to be done, and that is it's time to get odd, listeners. What does the Flow Master have on the docket for us this week? First, we're going out. I do believe this is a newcomer to the network. This is Venture Global, ticker symbol VG, trading 937, up appropriately enough, 37 cents, or a little over 4% today. On the year, though, another one that you could charitably characterize as a bit of a dumpster fire, was trading 24 bucks exactly a year ago. So they're off 1463, or about 61%. That said, if you want a little bit of a ray of sunshine, they bottomed out at about 6 3/4 on April 7th. So from there, they've had a nice little run. But outside of that, it's been just a dumpster fire of a year. I'm not sure what type of venture partner this is or what area they focus in. But Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what caught your eye in Venture Global Inc.?
So I was looking around at that email, which kind of shows the most successful opening option purchases yesterday or in the prior session, and it was kind of dominated by Nvidia and Google, and actually kind of some of the names that are very, very active. But for an odd block, I like to find something that's a little weird, and then I saw this one kind of in the top 10. And it's VG. I believe it's involved in the natural gas, maybe shipping or something. I'm not really sure, but the trade that if you look at the flow yesterday, there was a buyer of about 5,000 of the May 10 calls. Stock was about 890. That was in the afternoon, and that came after a buyer of about 3,000 of them for 25 cents when the stock was 872. So. On the day, I think the put call was pretty extreme. 18,000 calls versus just 400 puts. That's 5 times normal. Because these were out of the money calls, you saw the call skew kink to the upside. It was 3 times normal total volume, and it did open interest. We kind of know that because when going in, we can see that the trade size, they actually net opened 13,000 of those May 10 calls. And stock's at 935 today. They do have earnings next week, I believe. And as you said, it seems to be a pretty beaten up stock. I went back and I could see some heavy call volume when the stock got kind of pummeled a few months ago. But this is kind of an interesting one. I think there's some people that kind of have a $10 cutoff on the stocks that they're interested in trading. So, just a directional opening call buyer in front of earnings. If it's got some connection to kind of the energy space. I think it's worth watching.
Maybe it's time to take a seat while we're on the network here. Listen, I'm already seated, but maybe you're standing up while you're listening to this, listeners. Either way, take a seat because we're going to talk about Vivid Seats up next. Ticker symbol, appropriately enough, SEAT, SEAT. Trading $1.86, up a whopping 9 cents or about 5% today. So decent little day for them. I'm going to guess the year, not so much. And that is the case. Yeah, they were trading almost about $5.50 a year ago. So they're off about $3.50 or 65%. So trying to battle with VG for who's having the worst year percentage-wise right now. Been mostly straight down, listeners, with yet another drop very recently from looks like about 280 down to where they are right now, about $1.80. So a rough time out here in Vivid Seats this year. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what caught your eye in the land of Seat?
Yeah, so this one, I don't think I've ever looked at this name, but this one's a trade that just happened about an hour ago. The stock is $1.88, so it is a cheap stock. And what we see is a buyer of 5,000 of the SEP 2.5 strike calls for a quarter. So this is September's. They have a little ways to go, but it does look opening. Right now, the total call volume is 5,700 contracts, which is double the daily total. And a single one lot of puts is traded. So, we've talked about kind of the interesting things we see in low dollar stocks, right? When maybe it just makes sense to buy the stock instead. But what's funny is, at these conferences, right, we're all, traders like to talk about all sorts of things interesting and financial. And I was just recently talking to a guy here he said he had a friend who had written an arbitrage program that arbs between StubHub and some of the other ticket dealers. And I was like, he's like, yeah, he's making markets. I was like, wow, okay. And I don't know if Vivid Seats is in the ticket reselling business or not, but it did kind of resonate. I was like, wow, I was just talking about tickets. So I don't think, it's just this one, it's a cheap one. I probably would actually just take a little stock. But although a quarter for September, 2.5 calls, it's got a good, it's got the entire summer to kind of play out. I don't know. I'm not sure when they have earnings, and you got to be pretty careful on a cheap dollar stock. Looks like they had earnings earlier this week, I think. But this means they'll pick up the August earnings, and it's an interesting one. I mean, maybe worth a flyer in the stock.
Listeners, are you down for a little Vivid Seats? Would you just buy the stock at $1.85, or would you take a flyer on a little bit of the old SEP 2.5s for a quarter, or if you get the cheaper print, 16 cents, listeners? There you go, a deal. And speaking of deal names, I know Uncle Mike will have some thoughts on this last one here. Let's go out to the land of his beloved silver. And to a ticker symbol, appropriately enough, AG. I don't believe we've talked about, SLV and every other silver name you could think of here. I don't think we've ever talked about First Majestic Silver Corp before. Canadian silver miner, ticker symbol AG right now, listeners. Trading 560, taken to the woodshed today, off 66 cents or about almost 11%, about 10.5%. On the year, you kind of know what a year it's been in silver. It's kind of been a little bit of a whipsaw year. They were $7.11 a year ago, so they're off 21% year to date. But of course, in between, a lot of peaks and troughs, rallied to about $8 in May, and then they sold off in September to their low for the year of 443. Rallied hard, not actually after the election, but heading into the election, listeners. Got up to about 809 or close to it. Looks like that was their high for the year in October. Then they proceeded to sell off again. February got down to about 5 1/3 before rallying all the way in March up to about 7 1/4. Another aggressive whipsaw. This is a very volatile silver name, listeners. Down to 5 1/4 on April 8th before rallying again. Back up April 16th to $6.70 before settling right back down to where it is right now, listeners, $5.60. So a lot of back and forth in this volatile silver name. What did we find out here today, listeners? It's a bit of a call palooza, old call palooza. We first thought maybe it was a roll because we saw size prints on two adjacent strikes in the same month. But then, we looked a little more and saw they're actually both opening. So interesting stuff out here. We have, of course, by the way, this name reporting earnings today before the bell. So that's also obviously driving a lot of this flow out here. We first noticed about almost exactly 20,000, 19,999 of the AUG 5s going up with the stock not that far from here, 576, listeners, for $1.17. So close to the offer on these ones. And then right around about 5 minutes before, listeners, which is another reason why we thought maybe it was a bit of a roll at first, about 25,000 of the AUG 6s going up for 65 cents, kind of towards the bid on those. So your first blush is, well, maybe it was a related paper, maybe because there's more size on the second leg, or on the first leg, I should say, then perhaps maybe it's a bit of a they didn't do that well on this trade. But as you look at the volume today, listeners, more and more has continued to trade out there in AG out there right now. Size on both of these strikes to the tune of 25,000 of the sixes and 20,000 again of the fives. And again, interesting stuff out here. Mr. Flowmaster, well, before I get to you in a second, Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you, sir. Are you down with a little bit of AG? Are you aware of this name? Is this a name you like to trade? And then B, what are your thoughts on just a massive call palooza, 20,000 of the fives and 25,000 of the sixes, potentially related papers?
Well, I think that to answer the question, no, I don't trade AG ever. If I'm going to invest in precious metals, I want to invest in precious metals. This is one of those to where if you just look at the range of the underlying itself, back in 2022, it was at 981. Now it's down at 560. I mean, this is something that's really all over the map. So I think that this is, from the call palooza with which you're describing, this just looks like a very speculative call palooza at best, I would say.
Mr. Flowmash, same question to you. I'm looking right now. Looks like it exactly opening on the sixes. So that might back up my initial theory that maybe it was a
roll down from the sixes to the fives. What are your thoughts on size
paper in the AUG sixes and fives in AG, sir?
So yeah, I'm looking at that trade. It is an interesting one. It's printed on the EDGX, which is one of the SIBO exchanges. So we have a little better insight into. I can confirm that's opening customer buy. It was tied to stock. So now you're right. There's 25,000 that traded on April 22nd when the stock was around $6. So it's possible that's an unwind. Looks back then. Let's just see. Let's see if they're adding to the position or they're maybe getting out. It's an interesting one. I mean, the metal names, they really were the safe haven, in early April, especially gold. But in this case, I don't know. I would take it kind of seriously, actually, just because these trades are big. It looks to me like, though, at least for these sixes, looks to me like back in April, they were actually a seller around 95 cents. Stock then was 621. So if they're covering them today for 65 cents, stock's a little lower. Really, maybe it's just some profit taken.
That was my initial blush. It does seem like it's
kind of shaping out that way. Check it out for yourselves, listeners, as we head on into a special edition of the Mail Block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mail Block. And really quickly, before we get to our actual topic of the Mail Block, we had a live question coming in from you for our live chat, Henry, from Mr. Unlimited. He wanted to know about your data you were talking about earlier on your charts. It says, does a Flowmaster mean 10 a.m. Eastern? You're talking about 10 a.m. in your charts, or is that
what time zone we working at?
Yeah, sorry, I am a New Yorker, and I guess I consider everybody revolves around New York time. So this is Eastern time. So, and basically, a lot of people do sit out that first half hour. The liquidity is not. It takes a little while for volatility to kind of set its level, especially if the market's really moving. And then, but yeah, it's New York time, and and as I said, 10 a.m. is a weird time to jump into the market, because there are some economic numbers that come out at 10, and it's one of those times when you look through the data that there's kind of a typical widening out of quotes because of the fact that there's numbers that come out sometimes. We see the same thing around 2 o'clock or 2:30. So, but yeah, it's starting 10 a.m. So after the first half hour has elapsed, and then every 15 minutes, really right until the end of the day.
He points that out as well. He said, does this factor in reports that release at certain times of the day, like when the ISM report releases or the Fed minutes? It sounds like that's kind of lines up exactly how you were seeing it as well. So great questions from everybody. I'm glad we can get the live working out here. Glad the conference Wi-Fi is still on. Before they shut us off, Mr. Flowmaster, Uncle Mike and I had a pretty unpleasant gut punch on the show on Monday, where we kind of learned live as we were doing the show, listeners, that a beloved fan favorite on the network and a good friend of the network, good old Mr. Alex Jacobson, aka the Viceroy, as he was known around these parts, passed away over the weekend. Just a bit of a gut punch. I've been talking to a lot of people about him down here. It's kind of a shame that during his service this week, a lot of the options industry was down here. Otherwise, they probably would have gone to the service. I heard good things. I heard the option block was mentioned at the event, so I'm glad to hear that the family is aware of how much he was appreciated. And in his honor, I have been asking a lot of people this week in the Southern studio their thoughts on just the general state of options education. I mean, Alex was known widely as an options educator. That's how I first met him in that capacity at the ISC. He was one of the last educators on staff at an exchange in the industry. That's kind of a dead thing now, listeners. But a lot of people gave their thoughts, so look forward to that on the shows from OIC this week. But Mr. Flowmaster, you were not on the show with us this Monday, so you didn't get a chance to express your thoughts. I know you knew Alex very well. You were a big fan of his as well. What are your thoughts? If you want to share any memories of the incomparable Viceroy, sir, have at it.
I do have memories of Alex. I actually met him when I was working at Solomon Brothers in the early '90s in New York, and he was working for SIBO, and he would come and buy lunch for the entire trading floor, and they would cart in like dozens and dozens of big dishes of Chinese food. It was always Chinese food, and the entire floor. Okay, even though this was a trading floor where people were making a fortune, would all bail out of their desks and go stand in line to get the free Chinese food. And that was, and Alex would probably come and do that every month or two. Back then, that's when OEX was the big index that was, that was SIBO's flagship product. And really for the last 30 years, Alex was he was just he was a supporter of the business. He was also just a really good person, in terms of professionally and personally. Every time I would go to Chicago, because I'm based in New York, he would say, listen, if you ever get stuck at O'Hare, call me up. We live 10 minutes away in Deerfield, and you got to come sleep at my house. And so I never took him up on it. But he was a wonderful person. He cared a lot about the business. He cared about people, and he is sorely missed. And I'm glad that his family, got the messages that he was truly appreciated, and he really did kind of dedicate a big piece of his life to the business. I think he told me he was flying over 1 million miles a year in those early years, because he really was SIBO's top educator. Somebody would call him and have him fly to Europe or fly to Dubai and give option classes when options were new. I mean, when people really barely knew how to use these products, he was an early expert, and I'm so glad that he was able to share that knowledge on on your network. And yes, we will all miss him.
Yeah, I'm glad he got to see
these explosive markets we're seeing now where volume is through the roof, which he obviously played a part in helping growing that early on. Back in the early days when people still thought options was a bad word, he was out there kind of fighting the good fight when volume was nowhere near where it was today. And I do know from all my time talking to Alex, he did very much enjoy being the Viceroy. He took that title, such as it was, the title and that nickname, he took it very seriously. I don't think I ever saw him as excited as when people would come up to him and address him as the Viceroy. He would get very excited at that. So he definitely relished in his Viceroy status. And I will say, I heard the news when we finished the show on Monday, and then I flew out almost instantly after that to come down to the conference. I was picking up my bags in the Lauderdale airport, listeners, and I look up, and what did I see but a big sign advertising like the Viceroy Hotel as I was grabbing my bag. So it seemed like it was just a perfect coincidental timing. I even shared that with the uncleist of Mikes. It seemed like the Viceroy was coming with us on this conference journey here. Mr. Uncle Mike, I know obviously you were a big fan of the Viceroys. We kind of both had to process that live on the show on Monday. I'm curious if you have any additional thoughts you want to share about the Viceroy, sir.
I mean, nothing that hasn't already been said, but I always looked forward to hear. When I found out he was going to come and be on our show as a regular, I was actually kind of nervous, just because we're working with someone who's like on the Mount
like
Rushmore.
Having your dad on the show with you. Yeah, you're like, he's watching over you.
Yeah, and so it's like if you say one thing that's not correct, he's going to call you on it. But he always did. He was always somebody for me that if I was ever like, well, why is this happening? Especially in my early years I've been in the business roughly 20 years, and he could have he was just such a accessible, good person to work with at every stage of my career. And I think I said on Monday, I thought it was really cool that he came out. I had a 40th birthday party more years ago than I'd like to admit, but he drove all the way from Deerfield to St. Charles to my birthday party. And it was just really a cool thing. And he's been around in my career in a lot of different areas of it, and just a overall great guy. He is. I don't know who the other three would be on Mount Rushmore of option trading, but if he's not up there, then he belongs there.
Yeah, it was funny in those early days when it was me, you, Sebastian, and Alex. Alex was kind of like the put upon dad of the show. He put up with us crazy kids.
He really did.
But sometimes he would shake his head, especially at Sebastian, and be like, "Oh my God, what is he saying now?" So good times out here, Alex. The Viceroy will be missed. But you know what, Henry, you brought it up today. We talked about a lot of options trading on a lot of cheap stocks. Whenever I see an option trading on a sub 10, let alone a sub $5 stock, I always think of the Viceroy. So those will forevermore on the network be known as the Viceroy trades as we keep on rolling, listeners, right on into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, a lot going on this week already. But Mr. Flowmaster, is your travel done for a little bit, or do you have more? You were in Paris the week before. You're down here. Are you settling down a little bit, or is the SIBO sending you around the world again? And what's on your radar until your next appearance next week?
I do get to chill out a little bit on the travel. I think I'm in Chicago in June, but I'm getting excited we have our risk management conference in September is in Munich. So Mark, we got to get you on that list, but that'll be a lot of fun. I'm going to be watching. We still have earnings coming up. A number of interesting names. There's a lot of news hit this week, but in the options industry, there was
Speaking of news, breaking news.
American Pope.
Really?
First ever American Pope. White smoke. He's from Chicago.
Oh my! Is it
Augustinian? I don't have his name, but my producer, Pope Leo the 14th. Wow. American.
They're gonna call him Da Pope. He's from the city, Chicago.
Wow. I guess Trump put out that image for a reason. I got it.
Yeah.
I didn't think American Pope was possible.
White smoke for a Chicagoan. Apparently, one of the big issues with him is that he stayed silent
against some charges against a principal of a school that our producer went to. So she's familiar with this. So interesting. Wow. A Chicagoan is Pope. Flowmaster. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
I wonder what were the odds on Kalshi? I know you could bet on the Pope. I don't remember seeing an American.
Any American was
a long shot. Gotcha. That's interesting. Well, besides that news, there was a lot of options news. SIBO has a new CEO, Craig Donahue, which is exciting for us. And then, there's also, just this week, we saw a filing for short-dated single stock options from one of the exchanges, and there's also a pretty interesting comment letter out from Citadel with some market structure and regulation changes that they're proposing. So there's a lot to digest. I'm going to be working on that and just relaxing after a couple of weeks of travel. But I think things are going to continue to stay active. So I'm not worried about the markets getting boring.
Speaking of
proposals, really quickly, I've been asking everyone this week. Everyone's all abuzz about this NASDAQ 0-day proposal, essentially the MAG 7 plus 1. I'm sure you had a chance to look at it, Mr. Flowmaster. Have any thoughts?
SIBO's, and I am also in favor of evolution, right? That's really how this market has gotten to where we are. And actually, John Smolin from MIAX mentioned up there today that he thinks we'll see a 250 million contract day. So he's actually like leapfrogged me with the very aggressive predictions. But we're in favor of evolution and creating products that customers want to trade. I know you're very familiar with kind of the challenging parts of physically settled products, with aftermarket moves and contrary exercise, and that remains a concern. I noticed the filing they explicitly skip earnings dates. So they are avoiding kind of the worst predictable move. But there's a lot of moves that happen that are not predictable or because of an earnings pre-announcement. And, I just don't want to see customers get hurt and get into bad situations because they don't quite understand what's going on. And with after hours moves, I was actually talking to Steve Sosnick from Interactive Brokers about this just today. It can be really messy, and it's not quite, we talk about an even playing field, for as many participants as possible, and just go and try to find good information on after hours stock movers. Depending on what brokerage platform you're using, you may find it, you might not find it. It might be hidden under some menu where you got to go look at the after hours data separately from the current data. And I think it's tough on customers to expect them to pay attention to the, it's not just the initial after hours move. You really have to watch the after hours activity right until the closing of the exercise window, which is not actually the same at every broker. So I'm a little concerned that some customers are going to get hurt. It is kind of the natural evolution as we see. One thing I mentioned early on was 2/3 of the flow now is in options that expire within a week. Just 6 or 7 years ago it was only 1/3. So that's a huge shift, an inversion of kind of that short dated versus longer dated flow. So it doesn't surprise me that it's moving forward, or at least they want it to move forward. I just think and this has been mentioned by a number of the brokers, is everybody needs to be ready for it, and we have to have tools for customers to do the best that they possibly can. And after hours activity it's just a challenging part, and I think that it kind of favors the market maker side because they know exactly how these contracts work, and they also have the best information. So it concerns me a little bit. One thing I wonder kind of if they're specifically avoiding the earnings day, that might have been where a lot of the activity would come from. So I'm kind of wondering if they may not even actually be as popular as people think they might be. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how that proposal progresses.
Yeah, hot stuff. If you want to hear other
thoughts on that, a lot of people have thoughts on it. It's very controversial, as you might imagine, listeners. Again, stay tuned to all of our content coming from OIC this week. Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on till your next appearance?
Well, I think the main thing to keep an eye on is the tweets that come out. I think that's where we need to go, and that's where we need to keep our eyes on. And watching that, and then seeing we're about 170 points away from, and the S&P from where we started on the year. So 170 points is not a lot of movement in today's markets. And so I'll be watching to see if maybe we can go positive on the year.
That will certainly be interesting. And that's going to do it for us live from the Southern studio here at the Options Industry Conference. But if you want more live content, listeners, stay tuned. We got something new popping off on the network on Tuesday, May 13th, 10 a.m. Central. A lot of you have been asking for a little bit of a glimpse inside the studio in Chi-Town. You're going to get it on our launch of a new show, listeners. Yes, the European market brief, tackling what else but the European derivatives markets. And that first episode will be popping off Tuesday, May 13th, 10 a.m. Central. Tariffs, Trump, and turmoil. So a lot of fun there. If you want to check that out for yourselves, only one place to go. Got to go to our website, theoptionsinsider.com. Go to the shows tab, click on the European Market Brief tab, and you will see the registration link. You got to register to be part of that live one on the first episode. I know. Cool, fun stuff. Myself, it'll be Matt from Eurex. It'll be Melissa Brown from SimCorp, and our good buddy, Mr. Steve Sosnick from IB, joining me to hold court on all things European markets. Should be a good time. If you want to get it hot and live, you got to go to that link and register. So if you're even if you're in the pro, you still have to go and register for that one, listeners. So check it out, theoptionsinsider.com. Go to the European Market Brief show tab, and then scroll down. You'll see that registration link. And Mr. Flowmaster, if folks want to register for some cool SIBO goodness, where should they go? What should they do?
Just head over to SIBO.com. You can find the link there for the market insights and the market intelligence team. And then there's always SIBO.com/RMA, which is our risk and market analytics, where you can see the data and the platforms that we have. And I just sent you the deck, Mark, so you are free to post that for people to check out as well.
So listeners, if you're listening to the on-demand version of the panel, then you can follow along on our website with Henry's slides. There's only about 200 of them, right? So you definitely want to follow along. His presentation, definitely one of the more visually intensive of the conference here. And Mr. Uncle Mike, if folks want to talk, maybe they want to apply to join your Facebook cabal with you and Trump, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Head to stcharleswealth.com, set up an appointment to talk with me. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with any of our listeners if you're looking for a financial advisor. And also, at some point, I'll have to tell, I think I've told it on the show before, but I'm not sure. But true story, Donald Trump has asked for my autograph at one point, and I blew him off, not on purpose.
I'm going to pretend it was on purpose just for fun, because Uncle Mike is just that big. He turns his back on a future president of the United States. Check him out over there. stcharleswealth.com is the place to go. That's going to do it for us. It's also going to do it for us in the Southern studio at OIC 2025. Remember, a lot of great content coming at you throughout the week. If you want to get it early, head on over to the Pro, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. I will be hopping on a plane soon. Actually, you're going to get a bonus treat tomorrow, listeners, because I will be traveling tomorrow. So we'll have good old Dr. Vix stepping into the host chair. He will be playing my Joan Rivers on Vol Views tomorrow. What madness will they get up to when I'm not there? I guess you got to tune in to find out. So it should be a fun one on Vol Views tomorrow. Then I'll be back in the Chi-Town studio on Monday for another episode with the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by SIBO. SIBO's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.sibo.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.